Would you like to write and publish your own book? Today, I chat with published author Willie Orr, and we talk about the process of writing and publishing books. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Alison McWhinney podcast, where we have conversations about business and well-being success. And today I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast Willie Orr, who is an author amongst many other things. And we will be talking about how to write and publish your own book. Now, to give some background on Willie, he was formerly a hill shepherd in the Scottish Highlands. He was forced to abandon that way of life after a tractor accident. He graduated in history from Stirling and Strathclyde and has published non-fiction books and several short stories in HarperCollins Scottish Short Stories. Willie has also worked as a school counsellor for troubled adolescents, a research assistant for Tom Devine, and a freelance journalist mainly with The Scotsman. Willie was awarded the Scottish Arts Council Writers' Bursary and the Scottish Book Trust Mentorship. 2 books were published in 2019, The Shepherd and the Morning Star in June, and a novel, Mick, about a cruelly fostered child in Scotland. In 2023, Shiaba was published, a novel set in the Isle of Mull during the Great Famine of 1846, with a sequel, Return to Shiaba, in 2024. The third in the trilogy, Shiaba No More, was published in May 2025. Also published in Kindle in 2025, The Shearer, a novel set in remote Hebridean Island, and Not One of Us, set in Jamaica and London in the 18th century, and about a black girl who falls in love with a British officer and later challenges William Pitt and the British state. Slaver is due for release in 2027, a novel about a young Scottish farmer who makes a fortune as a slave owner in Jamaica. Willie, a very warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And perhaps if we could start off, if you could just briefly describe your childhood and your upbringing.
Well, I was a war baby.
Oh, right.
Yeah, in 1940. And for a while we lived in Camberley. In fact, my father was in the army and he was stationed near Windsor. And so we lived in Camberley for most of the war. So I have really quite vivid memories of that time with the doodlebugs. And there was a searchlight station beside the house with a crew who adopted me as their mascot. So I was able to get a lot of model planes for nothing when toys were not available. And I was there till about 1945, and then we returned to Ireland. I was sent to a boarding school when I was 8, which was a mixed experience as far as I'm concerned. Made me very aware of being privileged. So I was brought up really as part of the Protestant ascendancies. And after the army, my father became an MP. He was the, I think it was the Grand Master of the Orange Order. he was the Imperial Grand Master of the Orange Order at one point. So I was very much in that, in what was the Protestant ascendancy. I think I was then sent to a private school in Belfast, Campbell College, which was grooming young men for positions in authority. But I was asked to leave because I didn't really conform. I didn't really like it very much, really resented it. I didn't feel part of it either.
Mm-hmm.
So I left there and became an apprentice electrician in Harland and Wolff's. Well, I can't remember how long. Not very long, but from there I went to the army and served time there. During that time, I really didn't think about writing. My mother wrote poetry and had it published, I know, before the war and some afterwards. But as a boy, I was just interested in boy things and wasn't really the thing to do to show any interest in writing or reading. So actually, I didn't read much either until very much later. So that was my childhood, a privileged childhood.
Uh-huh. And what became your inspiration to start writing books?
I think
Later in life.
the accident probably revived an interest in literature because I had time. It had a number of effects. But I started writing then again, none of which was published though.
Mm-hmm. But you are now getting quite a number of books published. What's your top tip for coming up with a good book idea?
I think, well, here's an illustration as far as the Sheba trilogy is concerned. In 1968, I was working as a shepherd and helping a neighbor to gather. We took the sheep through the ruins of Sheba, which is an extraordinary settlement. It's just as though the people left yesterday. It most evocative. It's as though the people had left their sorrow in the stones. And I was quite moved by that. 10 years later, when I was doing some research for Tom Devine in the Duke of Argyll's archive in Inverera Castle, I came across a bundle of letters from the people of Sheba, including a plea for help. A petition was sent. And that cemented an interest. And I felt, having read those letters, this story must be told. It's not known, really. So that, first of all, I wrote a play for the youth theatre in this area, the Argyll Youth Theatre. I wrote a play about Sheba, and we toured with the play. Went to Mull, went to Appin, went to Oban with the young people. When we were in Benesson, we took some of the young people out to the ruins, and they were really moved by that and still remember it very well. So that was maybe 12 years later. And then after that, I felt that the story should be broadened out and started writing the novel just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, as an inspiration, it is possible anything can happen, really.
And particularly if you draw on your own experience or something you've come across, that can help to put a good story together, can't it?
Yes.
Mm.
I think that the story, in a way, was there about the evictions
Yes.
of the time. We were very unfortunate in finding there was a newspaper published at the time by the Free Church of Scotland called The Witness, and we had a complete account of what happened to those people, the immigrants in Canada. Uh, they had a terrible time both with disease and with the weather, the extreme cold in the Canadian winter, and many of them died there. But many of them, maybe half of them, did actually survive and live in Canada, and their descendants are there,
Mm.
which is interesting.
So what's your top tip for finding the right niche or target audience for a book?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
What's your top tip for choosing the right niche or audience for your book?
Well, initially I published traditionally,
Hmm.
and in a sense I left that to the publisher. If you're going to publish yourself, of course, that's very different. I have published the Shearer, I published myself, but the others were all done traditionally, which is much easier in that you're not so committed to promotion of your own work.
Yeah.
And that's good. That can be quite costly if you publish a book with publish it yourself, you're going to have to pay for advertising and so on. It's not a simple task.
No. And what's your advice for structuring a book from start to finish?
I'm very bad at that, Alice.
Oh, okay, so
I
how do
know
you
that
not do it then?
one should plan and one should have an idea of the course of the story, but very often uh, the story takes over, and
Mm.
it's never the same as I plan. Uh, I think even as far as the ending's concerned, I'm not always quite sure when I start where it's going to go. Maybe that's very self-indulgent, but I prefer working that way. Maybe that's why I left academia, if you like, and abandoned non-fiction to work in fiction, because there was that element of choice and freedom. At the same time, you have to have the factual scaffolding.
Mm.
If you're going to write historical fiction, the history side of it has to be fairly accurate.
So a lot of it is about letting the artistic writing flow.
Yes, I think so. I think I'm happier working that way. I know a lot of other writers plan meticulously and they have copious notes. I have copious bits of paper, certainly, for research, but I can't work in a very formal way.
No. And are there any guidelines for how long a book should be?
Well, a novel's about 90,000.
Yep.
That that's a very rough guide. I mean, obviously, well-known writers can go well beyond that, and they can accept that. and publishers will accept it and allow a well-known writer, an established writer, to go well beyond the normal words,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly around 90.
Right, 90,000 words, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you ever get writer's block? And if you do, what's your recommendation for dealing with it?
Yes, I have found that occasionally, and the thing is, do nothing about it. And that's there's more for if you were commissioned to have a book published have a manuscript ready for publication by a certain date. Obviously, you can't really do that.
Mm,
But I find that something turns up, an answer turns up within a few days. And when it does come, you think, oh, well, why did I not think of that?
yeah,
But it's about, you try, the phrase is, what if? What if so? That's the thing you have to try. But it is a risk.
yeah. Looking at the writing process and discipline, do you have any advice on how much an author should write every day?
That varies a great deal. I
Okay.
find it's affected by the weather, in that if it's very good weather during the summer, it's very difficult to stay inside and write.
Hmm.
Generally, I speak, yes, I write in the morning as a rule, and sometimes a bit in the afternoon, but never at night. I know other writers do, but then I have the luxury of being retired now, so I have endless time.
Hmm. And regarding editing, should you edit while you're writing or finish the writing first and then go back and edit?
It is a wonderful thing to have a professional editor.
Hmm.
If you're working with a traditional publisher, generally they will have both an editor and a proofreader, but an editor is invaluable. I
Hmm.
know that from the trilogy, the Sheba trilogy, that the last one was completed without an editor because his wife wasn't well, and she died just as we were beginning the work, and so we had to do without an editor, and that novel suffers from that.
Hmm.
I think it's really quite noticeable, the difference. So it's good to have a professional editor. I suppose if you uh, publish, if you self-publish, there is the risk that you'll just go ahead and publish anyway, but it would be better to have uh, passed the manuscript to a professional before you start publishing.
How many drafts does a book usually take before it's considered complete?
That depends whether it's very heavily weighted towards the history as opposed to the imaginative, creative writing. Uh, I think if it's quite heavily weighted towards history, uh, for example, in Not One of Us, uh, you probably have several drafts
Hmm.
and you go over the history several times. That Not With Us is an interesting book in a way that uh, it came about because I discovered that one of my Irish ancestors uh, was condemned to be hung, drawn, and quartered
Oh dear.
in 1803 for his association with United Irishmen. And as a youth, he had been posted to Jamaica when he was in the British Army. And there he met and married a Jamaican girl, a black girl from the island. She was the daughter of a freed slave. And that was quite unusual, in fact. Although many of the men in Jamaica kept black mistresses, very few actually married them. And this couple stayed together until the husband was deprived of his head. So he received that awful sentence, but in fact it was remitted so that he had to be hung and beheaded, and that must have been a comfort to him rather than to be quartered.
Crikey. In today's age with lots of software tools, what tools do you use to write? So do you have a lot of computer tools, or how do you do it?
Yes, I remember I started with an Amstrad.
Right.
With the green screen, or was it the green writing? No, I think it was the green writing. Is that right? It was
Okay.
a very ancient computer, but the cut and paste facility was tremendously helpful. And that still is. I know some people do write with a pen, and I admire them for that, but I find it easier to work on a computer.
Yeah. And how long realistically does it take to write a book?
Oh gosh. The first one, about a year. I suppose it's about a year average right now. When I think about it, the first one is about the Mick was about a year, and the same for the first of the Sheba ones was about a year. The ones now are taking a bit longer for some reason.
And for somebody who hasn't written yet but wants to write a book, do they need any specific qualifications to start writing?
No, but I think it's worth having some knowledge of the craft of
Yeah.
writing. I run a small group locally, a creative writing group, and we look at such things as structure and language, characterization, and so on, and float ideas about those. I think it would help. Looking back, in a way, I wish I'd done English instead of history, and therefore have a little more idea about structure. But I think it's worth doing that. I know folk have, particularly those who are self-publishing, they just do it. They just write and hope that it'll work. Sometimes it's very obvious. If you pick up a book, it's very obvious that they haven't looked at the craft.
Yeah. For somebody starting out as an author, it's quite a daunting experience, because thoughts that must go through your mind include, will anyone read my book? What's your advice for overcoming that initial fear and dealing with any criticisms that you might get?
I think starting with friends. I think these creative writing groups are actually a great way. In that you feel comfortable in taking criticism, from people that you know. Those are really quite valuable, I think, for any author, well, any emerging writer, as it were.
Mm. And looking at editing and preparing the manuscript, can you explain to us what the difference is between copy and proof editing?
Yeah, from my own point of view, the first, once you're finished your manuscript, to submit that to a publisher. I think if you haven't published before,
Yep.
you have a choice in you can either approach a literary agent and provide them with a synopsis and sample chapters, or you can approach a publisher directly with the same thing, just a synopsis of your work and sample chapters. Then, if either the agent or a publisher accepts that, then you will have to have they will be editing it for you in a way,
Mm-hmm.
or suggesting changes.
Mm-hmm.
And some agents are very intrusive and will insist on changes that the author might not be happy with, but ultimately they have the final word. But that all takes time. In other words, there's a very long gap between being accepted and actually seeing your book on the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen quickly.
Would you say traditional publishing is nonetheless better than self-publishing?
Yes, there's actually less work for the author. I mean, most of the contracts now include the responsibility to promote your work in the actual contract, which that's been a big change in the area of publishing. But that takes time as well.
Mm. And things like ISBN, probably, I presume the publisher handles getting an ISBN for your book, or do you
That
have to do that?
yes, you can buy an ISBN if you're self-publishing.
Right.
You can buy an ISBN for your book, but if you're working with a traditional publisher, they will see to that side of things and take over responsibility for it.
Yep. Now, in this electronic age, we now have a variety of formats for publishing.
Mhm.
So back in the day, it was a hardback, paperback, but we now have ebooks and audiobooks.
Yeah.
Does the traditional publisher organize audiobooks and ebooks for the author, or how does that work?
Depend if you're working with a traditional publisher, uh, you might have a discussion with them about audiobook. If they want to invest in that,
Hmm.
uh, obviously that saves the author expense. But on the other hand, the author can say, well, I would like to publish an audiobook anyway.
Hmm.
So you then have to find a reader, somebody to record, and that has to be recorded in a certain format uh, to fit Audible.
Right.
Um, Therefore, the recording costs money, then the reading costs money. So it's quite an outlay,
Yeah.
anything, a couple of thousand anyway, uh, to do that. Um, they say that that is the way forward.
Mm.
That that's going to be the future as Audible as the main publication. I think they are, in a way, if you have money, you employ a well-known actor or actress to read your book.
Mm-hmm.
And that obviously helps to sell it, because I think some people buy or get audio because of that, because of the reader, the narrator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Turning to the book cover and title and branding, how important is the design of the book cover?
Desperately important.
Oh, so quite important then.
uh, that's what. And of course, if you're self-publishing, you have the option to create your own, or you can find a suitable cover. And there's numerous sites you can get covers from to do that. But in a way, you get a better cover
Mm-hmm.
through a traditional publisher, because they employ a designer to accomplish that. But very, very important, even the position of the writing,
Mm.
where your name goes on the front, and whether it goes above or below the title, where it goes on the page, the colors, what colors you choose. These are all very important,
Yeah.
because it's a very busy market.
Mm. And how do you go about choosing a good title for the book?
That's I Yes, that's very difficult, and I've fought with that many times. Uh, that the one I referred to, not one of us. I think there must have been about 80 or 90 titles for that before I settled on the one. It's really very difficult. Whether you sum up the book in the title, or whether you find a title that will attract the the public, and yet have nothing really to do with the book.
Mm. And what's your advice around building an author brand that lasts beyond one book?
I Yes, I've read about that. That's what I'm sure that's what you should do, but I haven't yet done that. Uh,
Oh, I don't know. You've got several out now.
I've got I've built a group called based on the Shiaba novels. They're called the Shiaba people, and I like to keep them informed as to what I'm working on at the particular time, and maybe make comments about that.
Hmm.
I think that probably quite an interesting thing for readers.
Yes, yes. Turning to marketing and selling, um, what's the best way to market a book? I mean, if you go a traditional route, I presume the publishers do it.
Yeah, they traditionally the publisher will do that. I think, I mean, there's lots of ways. Amazon is obviously one way, and you can do that through buying time on Amazon. But there are a lot of others, like Readsy, uh, Goodreads, and if you can get your book onto one of these, I find Kirkus review uh, quite helpful,
Hmm.
and I got one reviewed by Kirkus. It does cost money though, I forget now, I think it's about 200. You maybe pay for a review in Kirkus, but from that you'll get a lot of inquiries from people who wish to, or who are offering to promote your book. So that's quite a good way to do it, I think.
So it starts to snowball a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah. And do you use social media to sell your books?
not as much as I should. No, no, I do very occasionally. Mainly at launch time, when you're launching a new manuscript. That's a good time to really work on social media. Uh, in a way, what the I believe anyway, what you should have is a short movie, a video to promote the book.
Mm,
Um, um, I haven't tried that yet.
yeah. One for the future, perhaps. And how do you go about pricing the book, deciding on the final price of the book?
You can actually get advice on Amazon for that, for
All right.
pricing. Yeah,
Okay. And how do royalties and payments actually work?
not well. Uh, Royalties generally are paid once a year, uh, towards the end of the financial year, uh, which in a way is a nuisance because if you launch a book, you don't actually know until you get your royalties at the end of the year whether it's successful or not. Well, you can judge by reviews, certainly. If you get good reviews, you can decide probably it is successful. Uh, but you have that year to find out really whether the book's successful or not.
Hmm. And do you have any tips for continuing the sale of books after the initial launch to keep those sales coming in?
Sorry,
Do you have any tips on how to keep sales coming in after the initial launch?
I think that's where social media will come
Mm,
in, and you just keep that going every now and again. Make some comment about it if you're talking about asked to talk about the book somewhere at a festival or anything.
hmm.
You can put that online then. Although the actual speaking at a festival helps to promote the book anyway.
Yeah. And how do traditional publishers go about launching books these days?
That varies a great deal. I think I've been left to do it. I've had both. Uh, I think the most successful launch I did myself, and that was of The Shepherd and the Morning Star.
Hmm.
Uh, Tom Devine was good enough to come up for that, and I think it worked quite well.
So did you run an event locally for it to launch it? How did you go about it?
Uh, it depends. I think Jen, most of mine, the talks I've done on the book have been in the in Argyll.
Hmm.
I haven't done any in the cities. Uh, Always hope to be asked for that, but it hasn't happened. Um, so I tend to know about the local festivals and so on, take advantage of that.
Hmm. And what's the best way to grow an email list as an author?
That's something I've yet to discover how to do
Okay.
that.
Let's put that on your to-do list then.
No, I know that's quite ideal, but
Mm,
so far I haven't done that. Just through the Shiba people, it tends to grow very slowly on that. But I know I should think about that and learn about it, but I haven't done yet.
okay. Well, maybe we can put some details on how people can join your list in the show notes for this podcast.
That's a good idea.
Let's start the process, shall we? Let's start right here. Action taken. Okay, so finally, how do you turn one book into multiple income streams? So we've talked about talking at festivals. Are there other things an author can do?
The Talking Festival, that's quite a good way. I think also the advertising,
Hmm.
and you can use social media. Um, People are frequently now advertising on Amazon, but they're not paying for Amazon advertising.
Yeah.
They're just putting their book, hoping that it won't be knocked back by Amazon. They're putting the book up. That's happening quite a lot just now, I notice. Uh, but reviews are the real challenge. Is to try and, I think, get as many reviews as you can. See, in the old days, well, even when I started writing, um, you you sent out copies to uh, reviewers, to people, say, in the newspapers, particularly the weekend newspapers, and you hope that one of them will actually take that up and produce a long review in newspapers. To have a contact there was at that time really quite valuable. I was lucky enough to know quite well the literary editor of the Scotsman, so I would usually get a review. But very often you'd send these books up and you never see anything of them again.
Mm,
Uh, so the publisher would send them out to uh, their contacts, but you can add to that yourself, saying that you can also send copies to so and so, so you get a review. Uh, but that's all gone now. It's not the newspapers really, although if you get a big, one of the big broadsheets, it's quite good to get into.
yeah.
The Guardian, for example, or one of the weekend papers. It's quite disheartening in a way because you send a lot of copies out to these folk and you never get anything back.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of the podcast now. We've touched on Amazon, so obviously people can buy your books on Amazon. Where
Yeah.
else can they find them? Are they available anywhere else?
Well, other than bookshops, the major bookshops,
Yep,
Waterstones.
yep.
Although I must say, Waterstones aren't good at keeping enough copies at any one time, but Waterstones is quite good that way. Amazon mainly, I think
Yeah.
that's where mostly.
Okay, well, this has been a really interesting chat. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your expertise. It's been
Well,
much appreciated.
well, thank you for asking me,
Oh, you're
and I
most
hope
welcome.
we'll meet again soon.
We will.
We will.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye bye.
I would be most grateful if you would please subscribe to my channel here so that I can help grow the channel and reach more people. Thank you so much. Your subscription would be much appreciated.